So now I'm going to turn it over to Marco Arias to introduce himself and kick off today's webinar on simplifying inventory replenishment using ForecastPro.
Thank you, Sabina. Hello, everyone. Hope you're all fine. I am Marco Arias. Basically, I've been working with ForecastPro for decades now, and I've been studying these topics for more than 2 decades right now. And as you can see in this slide, I'm actually still studying. Now I'm actually doing a doctoral research in this field, relating resilience in the supply chain with all of this forecasting and replenishment, inventory replenishment models and things. And also I have experiences as managerial experience in several companies. And I've been teaching in the University of Costa Rica at the Industrial Engineering Department for also more than 20 years. So I'm gonna try to show you some examples of how to create, how to model inventory replenishment models using ForecastPro. This is the second webinar that we teach about this topic. And in the first one, we received very good answers from everybody and a lot of questions because they were very interested in actually implementing a replenishment model inside ForecastPro. We do know that a lot of your ERP systems or some other system software, they have inventory replenishment capabilities, but sometimes it might be interesting to do them inside ForecastPro, so it might be easier. So that's basically what we're going to talk about today. I hope you enjoy the session. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you, BFS. Thank you, Sabina, again. Okay, we'll start talking about supply chain strategy. Is it efficiency or is it resilience? Efficiency is like always, and resilience is like something new. Supply chain have always been complex, no doubt about it. Extreme events and recent extreme events have made it even more difficult. And successful planning philosophies, like some very well-known ones, have been seeing serious flow interruptions in supply chain, causing severe stockouts and related losses, and that has been happening around the world. In our supply chain strategy, is our supply chain strategy aiming at the right direction, or is it aiming only to efficiency? That's a question that I'm asking you because I want you to ask yourselves about that. What is enterprise and supply chain resilience? Basically, these are 2 important definitions: the capability to anticipate and be prepared to face disruptive events, and if their occurrence is inevitable, the capacity to recover as soon as efficiently as possible. That's resilience, enterprise resilience, and of course you can amplify that to supply chain resilience. And disruptive events are basically incidents causing expected or unexpected disturbances that adversely affect a company and its supply chain. Disruptive events are very common nowadays, and that is basically why we're doing this research. But enhancing enterprise and supply chain resilience is the key. Today, supply chains must plan for resilience too, maybe even more than planning for cost reductions and efficiency, because supply chains somehow are right now very, very efficient planning for that, but not for resilience. So resilience is like the new thing that strategies must include. And strengthening awareness and knowledge through education and training will always be another key for successful implementation. Monitoring key variables to identify daily disruptions. And I'll read it again, daily disruptions. That means that I'm not talking about a tsunami or the invasion of Russia to Ukraine. No, I'm talking about daily disruptions that we have in our data, in our demands, in our supplies, okay? Inventory deployment and visibility, always a key. Collaboration, sales and operation planning, integrated business planning, CPFR, of course, basic philosophies here. Technology adoption, everything related to Industry 4.0, artificial intelligence, classification and regression algorithms. Companies need flexible scenario planning to become adaptive and reactive when facing disruptive events. That's basically what I'm talking about here. And it's very good to calculate final inventory and order quantities projections for the forecast horizon. You'll see in this presentation that it's not the same to do those calculations just for one period of time than for doing it for the whole horizon. And of course, you should implement easy to use replenishment models. Take a look at the words easy to use replenishment models, please. Okay, talking about, again, disruptive events. Does the event need to be extreme to cause disruption? Can disruptive events occur frequently? Yes, sure, they might occur every day. Can disruptive events influence inventory management? No doubt about it. Does your inventory replenishment model show you potential disruption? I'm not sure about it. That's a tough one. Are you working with resilient suppliers? Do you check if your suppliers are resilient? Do they have resiliency practices and things like that? That's a good tip, by the way. Is your inventory replenishment model flexible? Or does it have the parameters, static parameters or something like that? Okay, so then let's get into inventory replenishment models. Some fundamentals. Why should we use replenishment models? Business dynamics, that's the first one. And now business dynamics facing disruptive events. Continuous and discrete distributions. That means that demand patterns are very different between each others, and that makes forecasting a real challenge. High forecasting error in several SKUs. Yeah, I know we've been working hard to minimize those errors, but we still have around the world several SKUs with high forecasting errors. High variations in the lead time. Okay, so that's now more common than before with all these pandemic things and everything that has happened in the world. Dynamic safety stocks. Not a good option to have a static safety stock. Safety stock should be dynamics, indexed to forecasts. Multi-echelon supply chain, and they need to control the action and future inventory levels. If you don't see future inventory levels, it's going to be very tough to make the right decisions. So I'm going to show you here how to do those calculations, and I'm going to show examples of the type of decision that you can improve by using these models. And they need to control and plan for cash flow. That's always a must in every strategy, in every company, in every organization. So what is inventory replenishment? When and how much to purchase or to produce? That's a basic question and has always been and will always be a difficult one. Then, based on demand forecasting, we have to do the inventory replenishment, not only on historical data. We have to use forecast. That's why we use forecast. Statistical forecast or machine learning models, they are all still very good models. And if we also can combine them, it might be even a way better model. So we've done several important things in forecasting. Now it's time for us to use those results in inventory replenishment too. We must consider inventory position. That means on-hand inventory, in-transit inventory, and lead time negotiations in order to look for less variability. That I know that is a tough one right now. And of course, the goals that you might have for fill rates and things like that. The processes of inventory management. The first one, of course, demand forecasting. The other one, defining those order quantities, several methods to do that. And then the control systems for the inventory levels and customer service planning. That might be fill rate, probability of no stockouts, and several ways to do this. And then the inventory deployment along the supply chain. That is also a very difficult task. So the main goal of a replenishment model is to control and ensure that inventory levels meet the company's needs. So they work as the right partner for forecasting. That means right forecast plus right replenishment models equals less stockouts and less inventory. That's our goal, even in the presence of disruptive events. So how to improve resilience and performance in the supply chain based on replenishment models? That's the main question here. Then enhancing resilience again. Using powerful forecasting models is the first step. They must be inputs to our replenishment models. That means stop using only the historical data. Use your forecasted data. Safety stocks must adapt to the forecasted demand. So you don't need to use safety stock only with historical data. Things change and things are changing a lot. So it might be wise to make a dynamic safety stock calculation. Demand during the lead time, also dynamic and based on forecasted demand. Also, the reorder points will need to work in the same way. They must adapt to lead time variation. Replenishment model must adapt to events management. And they must show visibility for us to make good decisions. Then they must be able to work with variant coverage goals. What is a coverage goal? It's an inventory coverage goal, like how many months of inventory that I want to have, or days of inventory that I want to have, and things like that. So of course we can include companies' policies in the inventory replenishment models. And of course, an online communication between forecast and replenishment model is a must. So commonly used replenishment strategies and pitfalls. I love this slide, by the way. this slide is very funny. I love this slide, but it's true. It's true. Sometimes, poor dog, right? Down to the last bag. Oh, poor dog. And then when should we place an order? What should the order quantity be? How often do we review our inventory position for this dog does not have to face this sad situation? Okay, types of replenishment models. There are a lot of types. My advice is that you choose a simple one, one that everybody understands in your company, and the one that, of course, takes into account your inventory policies of your organization. But we can have continuous and review and periodic reviews. We can make the replenishment model based on minimizing costs or maximizing service levels, or based on desired coverage, static coverages, not my recommendation, or dynamic coverage. That is basically what I'm going to do here right now. I'm not going to do the minimizing cost or the maximizing service levels, because they are kind of implied in your desired coverage. That means that you have to define those goals, and they must be linked to the strategy of your company and to the financial goals of your companies. And most companies are not using cost models right now to calculate order quantity. We've seen that in more than 60 companies, not using those classical models to calculate the order quantities based on cost, because sometimes it's very hard to keep updated the costs. So they have found more straightforward ways to do this, such as inventory coverage goals, as using them as order up tool levels. And that's basically what I'm going to show you today. Coverage goals are defined as a company policy, but they have to be dynamic goals. And coverage goals are indexed or linked to the review period and the lead time. That is another option. I'm going to do both today. Common pitfalls: low forecasting analysis. That's a common one, but I think that companies must pay attention to that. More forecasting analysis will give you very good results. Calculating order quantities just for one period, that's not enough. I'm going to show you why. Low visualization of potential disruptions, that's a tough one, but if you can do that, and if you can increase that visualization, it's gonna give you a lot of happy days. Low event analysis. Events are very tough, but if you can do some If you can analyze them, you're going to have very good results too. Replenishment parameters calculated outside the replenishment model, but not updated frequently. Sometimes some people do very, very, very good analysis calculating the parameters of the replenishment models. Let's say the reorder point, the safety stock, the order up to level, and all those parameters. But sometimes in some software, we have seen that they are there and nobody knows who calculated them, or nobody updates them. Oh, you could be planning with old data, and that could be a problem. So safety stock calculations too, based on the deviation only of the historical demand, not based on forecast errors. This will surely increase your inventory. And my question here would be, why are you forecasting for then if you're not using the forecast error to calculate your safety stocks? Okay, and the demand during the lead time, calculated based only on historical data. Again, not on forecast. No, you have to use your forecasting data, and not forecasting the inventory position. That won't give you visibility. So this is an example of only one period on the horizon. You can do the replenishment model only for one period. In this example, this is only for April, for 1 month. And as you can see, I have a lot of rows in the ForecastPro screen, in the ForecastPro window, and the override grid. And I have a lot of formulas. And as you can see, there I have, of course, the statistical forecast, an S&OP line for overrides, the forecast data, in-transit inventory, on-hand inventory, goals for inventory coverage, 4 months in this example, safety stock calculation, reorder point, order quantities, and a lot of things there. But that's only one column. If you do that, that might be a good start. If you don't have anything, that might be a good start, because it does use forecasting data to calculate safety stock, to calculate reorder points, and to calculate order quantities. So that might be a good start. But maybe you will need to go to step 2 very soon, because you're going to have good results with this, but you're going to have better results with the other one. And this is an example of the other one, what I'm talking about. Right now, these calculations are for, let's say, 7 months here. The horizon is up to you, but you can have something like this, 7 months here. What's the difference? The first column is actually the same as the other slide, but the other columns tells us what might happen in the future. So the order quantities might be this and this and this, but where is the inventory position? Where is the final inventory with the one that I supply, the field rate for my clients? Here is the final inventory position, this one here in light blue, the final inventory. So I can take a look at the final inventory and I can see if it does fit my expectations, my goals. And I, of course, if I see something wrong here, I can react, I can do things. And that's what basically S&OP is all about. And this is something just to help an S&OP process. And you will see this when I open up ForecastPro. So how to implement replenishment models using ForecastPro. Basic steps. First one, train your people in forecasting. Train your people. People are the key here. Have always been the key, and I think will always be the key. They can achieve, usually they can achieve excellent results, testing several forecasting models. What I'm talking about is you can try with the expert selection in ForecastPro. It's awesome, but sometimes for some different demand patterns and very tough demand patterns, you can click on some other forecasting models, and maybe you will have a very good, very pleasant surprise. And right now with the machine learning models that ForecastPro has included, it might be a good time to test those models too. Train your people in event management in ForecastPro. ForecastPro is powerful using events, but in the practice in companies, it's not very common to see users actually managing very good the event management options that ForecastPro offers. I know that they are time consuming, but I will show you an event. I will show you an example of why you should do that, at least with the most important items in your products in your portfolio. Define your inventory policies before creating an inventory replenishment model. Sometimes we've seen in practice in our company, we have a company, the name of the company is Macro Logistica, and we work basically in several countries, but we've implemented ForecastPro, I think, in about 75 companies right now, and we're basically a very small company. My partner, Alexander Jenkins, and me work with this, and we sometimes work with some other people. And well, we have seen here, and if Alexander is in the public, he could say the same thing that I'm just telling you about. Sometimes people try to start creating the inventory replenishment model in ForecastPro from scratch, from zero. And it takes a lot of time if you do that. But if you plan for that model, maybe in an Excel spreadsheet or something, it would be way easier than to do it in ForecastPro. It's not the same as using it in Excel, but sometimes when you do that in Excel, you will find some things. It would give you some lights to improve your model, and then when you include it in ForecastPro, it would be smooth. Okay, so also try to determine which external data you need. External data, I'm talking about in-transit inventory, on-hand inventory, and maybe some other external data that you must read from your database. Today, I'm going to read it from Excel files, but you should be reading those from databases. And visualize your external data in ForecastPro is very, 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 very important. Some basic models using ForecastPro that I'm going to develop today, I'm going to show you today. Periodic reviews, reorder points, and order up 2 levels. The first one, I'm going to do 2 examples. And these parameters are calculated outside ForecastPro and imported using the external data feature. I'm going to show you that. And the external data is basically the reorder point and the order up 2 level, and might be also the reorder point and the inventory coverage goal. And we can also calculate those parameters inside ForecastPro. That's up to you. We can test both. I'm going to do both today in the same project, in the same ForecastPro project. Order quantities can be linked or indexed lead time and review times. I'll do that. And periodic reviews and order up 2 levels are basically. Also, we can work with some other different models like periodic reviews and order up 2 levels using coverage goals. Also, we can use external data that you define outside ForecastPro, or we can do the calculations inside ForecastPro using forecasting data, of course. Okay, so some keys for tailoring a replenishment model strategy to meet the needs of your organizations. This is what we call a roadmap. Implement a robust forecasting process, including ForecastPro's implementation to generate, of course, statistical forecasts. Train the planners in ForecastPro. Again, I've said that like 3 times right now. Train. Train the planners in demand planning concepts, strategic issues such as collaborative models and sales and operation planning, and some tactical issues such as how to calculate a safety stock, what is a reorder point, how can you calculate an order at 2 level, and things like that. Then implement replenishment models in ForecastPro. So ForecastPro can update parameters every time a forecast is generated, updated. Train your people also in resilience, enterprise and supply chain resilience. Talking about preventive and corrective actions. What should we do if something happens? What should we do if our supplier is not going to supply the products, the raw materials to us? What should we do? We should know that in advance. And customize your replenishment models and stop using other companies' models. You should customize your own model. You can do that in ForecastPro. Take advantage of that. Your company might have some similarities to other companies, but each company is a different world. And then include, that's a recommendation, include enterprise and supply chain resiliences in your business strategies. Okay, so what should we expect if we do these things? Of course, resilience awareness, a more structured planning process, customized replenishment models, Replenishment quantities calculation based on forecasted data, forecasted inventory levels, and one of the most important ones, reduced inventory levels. We've seen right now so far 10 to 15% reductions without affecting service levels. That's pretty good. Reduce stockouts. Some companies have even improved from 10% stockouts to even 0 stockouts. If you combine this one with the one I just read, that's basically our goal here. Okay? And because of the business dynamics at the beginning, you might be seeing some inventory increases in the beginning, but after some time, it will stabilize if you do what ForecastPro. The company needs between 3 to 6 months to have preliminary results. That's true. That's an average, of course. There are some companies you can do it in less time, or even it might take more time, but that's an average. And to achieve a mature, robust process, it might take up to 1 or 2 years to do this. Of course, that depends on the lead time. Okay, so now let's go to ForecastPro. Now we will see some replenishment models using ForecastPro, and we'll start with an example using a coverage model with external and internal calculations. I'll start with the simpler one, which is just one column. Are you seeing right now ForecastPro on the screen? Okay, thank you, Sabina. Okay, so basically I have a very small project here. It's just an example. We have a company. This is the company, and then we have categories, and in category 1 and category 2. And inside those categories, we have a couple of SKUs for each category, okay? Different patterns and different things. So the first time ForecastPro does, of course, it will create a forecast. It will calculate the forecast. First, I'll show you the demand manager, the data manager. I only have historical data here and external data here. In the external data file, I have an in-transit inventory and on-hand inventory, and also I have coverage goals, inventory coverage goals. Only 3 things. Could be 3 files, could be 3. If you're connected to a database, this could be 3 tables or 3 views. And then I have some modifiers here just for the lead time, just to customize the lead time for each SKU. So as you can see, it's not a complex project. It's a very simple one. Then you run ForecastPro. ForecastPro will read the external data. Which is the external data? Basically in transit. In this example, 500 units for this SKU. The on-hand inventory, 480 units. And the coverage month, 4. That's a goal. I want to have 4 months of inventory for this product, and for this one 3 months, and for this one 2 months, and for this one just 2 months. Okay, different patterns could have, of course, different goals. And then I basically created the inventory replenishment model. As you can see, this is just for 1 period, so it's okay for order quantity calculations. As I said before, it might be a very good start. So the first thing I do is I calculate a safety stock. Why I'm not using only the inside formula that ForecastPro uses, that the name is safety. As you can see in my screen, there's a word safety. That's what ForecastPro calls a token. And a token is a calculated formula inside that token. So if you click safety, it would calculate the safety stock. But as you can see, my formulation is a bit different. That's because I'm going to use it in the future. And to use it in the future, I need to do something else, just than decide only using the safety function. I will use the safety function. I'm actually using the safety function there in the screen, but I combine it with some other things. Basically, when I work with safety stock levels, we like to include some upper limits to the safety stock and some lowest limits. So we let the formula work here between the low level and the high limits. Okay, that's basically what we do. And the upper levels are usually linked to a company policy. We don't want more than 5 weeks of safety stock. We don't want more than a month of safety stock. And in order to respect that, we include that as an upper limit. And if the calculation is below that, ForecastPro will use the safety option. So that's basically how we created safety stock. The reorder point is quite the same, quite similar. ForecastPro has also a token, an internal function that is called reorder, and reorder would work very good. But as you can see, I have to formulate the formula different. I use something safety stock plus demand during the lead time. Why I am not using the reorder formula inside ForecastPro? Because it would work very, very good for the first column. But since I'm going to use it in the next columns, I created something called the demand during lead time use. Which one to use? Because I can have different lead times and I can have different coverage goals. That's basically what I'm doing. So I have to write down the formula. It's not a complex formula, it's a very simple one. And the order quantity, this might be the toughest formula, but it's basically a conditional formula. What it says is, if inventory position is below the reorder point, could be below or equal, is below the reorder point, use order quantity first. do order. And how many units should we order? Use the safety stock. Consider the inventory position, so you don't have to buy it again. You already did that. You don't have to purchase it again. You already did that. And use basically the maximum between the coverage goal and the lead time demand. Why? Because if the lead time demand is higher than the coverage goal, you need to purchase the lead time demand in order for you to do not have to do another order quantity again in the next month. Okay, and if the coverage goal is higher than the lead time, so you would use the coverage goals. In this example, coverage goal is 4 months and lead time is, let me see, 2 months. You can see it here in the data. Okay, lead time is here, 2 months, coverage goal 2 months. So what this formula would do, it would use 4 months, basically 4 months. Okay, and safety stock and everything. Okay, so it would calculate this 2,513 units, and I included a manual order quantity row. Why? Because if you want to change it, you can do it. You can do it individually for each item in your portfolio. So this formula here is quite simple. It basically says that if we do have a manual order entry, use that number, and if we don't, use the calculated one. That means the user is again the key. If the user knows something, if the user wants to round it to some, let's say, pallet sizes or box sizes or container sizes, you can do it here. Of course, we can also include that with the external data and doing more calculations, but I didn't want to do this because it would look very heavy, the model. But if the user says that it must be 3,000 for an example, basically has to write down the number here, and as you can see, the final order quantity would change to 3,000. You just click on the commit button and you will have the new final order quantity here. That's basically what this option does. It's very, very flexible, and once again gives the user the, let's say, the power, I would say the responsibility to think about this and to analyze this in the right way. Then we calculate the inventory position. Here, there are several ways to do this. I included a very simple one: inventory, on-hand inventory plus in transit less the forecasted data. Some people do not use the forecasted data. That's up to you. That depends on the type of model you're trying to implement. That depends if you think that the order arrivals would be at the beginning of the month or at the end of the month. And then this next, let's say, 6 rows are tricky rows, are the rows that I use to let the model which coverage month to use and which is the lead time. I don't have like an external table, like a VLOOKUP table using Excel, where I can go and says, okay, if the lead time is 1, bring me that number. If the coverage month is 2, bring me that number. We don't have that here. So we have to do this tricky formulas here. And this is a very simple one. This one goes for which coverage to use. This is basically, as you can see, what I do. It's a conditional formula, and that depends on the coverage goal. So if the rounded coverage goal equals 1, you must use the M1 option. We'll see what is M1. And if the coverage goal equals 2 months, you would use the M2 option and so forth. And then we have the demand during lead time use is quite similar. The demand is another conditional formula that depends on the lead time. So if you have a lead time of 1, use M1. If you have a lead time of 2, use M2. Okay. But what is M1? What is M2? What is M3? And what is M4? Take a look at this. If you use M1 here, it's basically it's basically related to the forecasted data 1 period ahead. So this 638 units is basically this is 600. Why? Because let's say that the lead time is 1. If the lead time is 1 and you're here, you're gonna have to ask for this quantity. You're gonna have to cover this quantity. But if the lead time is 2 and you are here in April, you have to include these 2. And this goes, and this 1,306. This is basically this number, you see? And if you go to 3, this is basically this number. That's basically what we do. We're going taking a look at the future. We are using forecasted data. We are using what ForecastPro is a very expert software in. We're taking advantage of the capabilities of ForecastPro to include them in a replenishment model. It's not simple as it looks, but it's quite simple. At the end, it's quite simple. And then we calculate a finished inventory, an initial inventory and a final inventory. Right now, with only one column, initial inventory is the same as this number, of course. But when I show you the other month in the model, you're going to see something different. And we also calculate the final inventory. What happens if the final inventory is a negative value? You have to react. You have to call your supplier. You have to do something. But you would know that in advance. This is future. We're taking a look at the future. Of course, there are uncertainties, of course, but it's a good tip to call your supplier, even though. And these other formulas here, I'm not using them in the one column model. I use them in the several column models. And of course, here we have a coverage goal. This is actually the coverage goal that I'm using. As you can see here in the formula, right now, this coverage goal is just related to this external number, okay? So I'm working with externally calculated parameters, okay? But if I want to change this to see what happens, it's quite easy. You only have to do something like this. Change to the other goal that you want to test, click enter, and then click commit. And you have the number. And as you can see, the number, the order quantity changed a lot. It was, I think, like 2,500 units or something like that, and now it's 1,800s. Okay, so that means that you can test several scenarios here in your replenishment model. You can change several things. I just changed the inventory coverage goal. Quite easy. Change inventory coverage goal. I also can change the lead time, of course, and I can change. Of course, I can change the forecast. Of course, the forecast I can change using the SNOP line row. I can change the forecast, but I can do these things. This coverage goal that right now I changed it to a fixed number. I can relate it back again to this number if I want, just by doing this. So it's quite easy. Okay. Or if you want, maybe you want to have the forecast and the coverage goal related to the lead time and calculated related to that lead time automatically. Let's do it. I'll click here. I'll delete it. Okay. I click again. I'll say equal. And I include a very, very simple formula. I would like to use the coverage goal as, let's say, 2 times the lead time. Maybe 3 times the lead time. Okay, just to have a different number. Just as simple as that. You can do this. You can do this. Commit option. Okay, something happened here. Let me delete it. Sometimes I have to delete it and commit for the database to actually erase the formula, and I'll do it again. 3 times the lead time. Boom. Now I have a 6, and it's okay. And as you can see right now, if you change the lead time, if something happens, if some disruptive event happened in the world and we have to change the lead time because our suppliers are not working with the same lead times, just change the lead time here, and the forecasting replenishment model will use it, your new lead time, because now your coverage goal is indexed to your lead time. Okay, good. So this is, I would say, a very good start if you don't have been working with inventory replenishment models in ForecastPro. But you can do better. Maybe let's say step 2. I'll go to step 2 right now. This would be an example of step 2. It's basically the same. It's basically the same. You'll just have to copy the formulas and paste them in the columns at the right, as many columns as you want. And it's not a perfect model. If you want this model to be even better, you would need about 3 times this rows. There's more. We need about 12 rows or something if you want to do it more in a more exact way. But I didn't want to show you that one because that is a very, very big one. But I'll show you the logic of this one. It's the same one, and as you can see, this is exactly the same number that we had on the other model, right? And it works the same, but it works in the future. And as you can see, the safety stock formula, we copy and pasted it here. Also, the reorder point formula is exactly the same, but take a look at this. Take a look at this. It says safety stock plus demand during lead time use. But now demand during lead time use would be here. And of course, it's a different value than the one we used here. But it's very smart. As you can see here, demand during lead time here, and the lead time is 2. Okay, so we're using this number. You need this number. Why? Because if you're here in May, if you're in May and your lead time is 2, you will need June, it's already gone. July is already gone. If you don't have inventory on hand, you're going to have problems. And you have to think about this. You have to think about this. And actually, as you can see here, you need to cover, let's say, if you're working with back orders and you can supply back orders, you will need to do this, use this formula, because you would use something like this. Okay, this is the number that is here on M4, and this is the number that you have to take into account here, and here, in order to see if you have to open up an order, place an order. Okay, so that's basically what we do. And as you can see, it's very dynamic, it's very flexible, but you need to use these formulas. And as I said before, if you want it to be even better, you might include like 8 formulas more here to cope with different situations, different combinations of lead times and inventory coverage models. Okay, so I'm gonna do two last things. As you can see here in this model, we have problems here. The final inventory for May is a negative value. That means stock outs. This is what I was talking about in the presentation. You need something, and ForecastPro is that something. You need something to tell you that you are going to have troubles. Probably are going to have troubles. If you see a negative value there, why a negative value? Because lead time is 2. There's no time to buy it in the regular way. It's too late. You will have something around 354 units of stock out. But if you see this, are you gonna wait here doing something like this? No, I don't think so. That's not your job. Your job is to call, to negotiate, to call your suppliers, to do something, to call alternative suppliers. I don't know, something. You have to do something. You're the planner. You have to do it. So what is important here is also that these replenishment models can show us what might happen. And red negative values are basically designed. If you see a red negative value, run, do something. Check the data and then run, do something. Preventive actions, remember I said before, preventive actions, not corrective actions. That's too late. Maybe it's better preventive actions. So that's what I wanted to show you. And the last thing I'm going to show you is events. What happened if we have an event? Let's say that SKU1, I'll do it here, August. Let's say that here in August, the SNOP team in one of their meetings realized that they will sell not 690 units in August, they will sell, let's say, 3,000 units. How did they got to that conclusion? Maybe they saw an disruptive event. Disruptive events could be good. That could be good if you have the power to prevent it. That could be good. If you don't see those 3,000 units, you're going to have a lot of stockouts and a lot of your clients unsatisfied. But if you see those 3,000 units before they actually happen, you can do this. And as you can see, it's very, very, very simple. This team, which are responsible for bringing us those events of the future, if they just include this and the lead time is okay with us, ForecastPro in this replenishment model will change all the data. And as you can see, these 3,000 units are actually ordered from the first month. I'll go back. Take a look at this number, 4,823 units. If I do not do this, I will only buy 12,513. That means you will have a lot of stockouts. 2,500 against 4,800, you're gonna have a lot of stockouts. You're gonna have a lot of troubles here and a lot of costs here, and your supply chain will basically not be resilient if you do not do this. So as you can see, it's a combination of things: event management, preventive actions, forecasting, of course, and then inventory replenishment models. I'll go back to the presentation now. And this is the summary. Basically, supply chains are complex and need to be managed efficiently, considering enterprise and supply chain resilience. As robust planning, demand planning with collaborative forecasting are essential for success. Demand can sometimes be very complicated to forecast, that's true, but you gotta give it a try. That's basically it. And also you can complement those efforts with replenishment models. Perfect combination. And they are excellent tools for future inventory levels estimations, and ForecastPro, of course, can work with customized inventory replenishment models, and of course, a lot of statistical and machine learning models. Thank you very much. Sabina, it's up to you.
Yeah, thank you, Marco, for a great presentation. I know these can be pretty complicated, and you did a great job of breaking it down step by step. So we're going to get into the Q&A portion in just a minute. I know we are getting close to the end of the presentation. Just a reminder to submit your questions in the control panel. We'll get to them shortly. First, I did want to remind you that today's webinar is being recorded. So it's going to be posted on the ForecastPro website and YouTube channel, and we'll email all of you again next week when the recording's available. Next slide, please.
Sure.
So this webinar is part of our quarterly webinar series. So you may have attended one in the past. We do have some other upcoming events that I want to let you know about. One of them is our popular business forecasting workshop. So we've got 2 different dates scheduled right now. One is May 3rd through 5th, and then the other is going to be this September 7th through 9th. And these are 3-day seminars, online seminars that go in depth about forecasting techniques. It talks about your forecasting process and ways you might improve it. And then it uses ForecastPro to demonstrate all of these concepts. So as Marco emphasized during this presentation, it's really important to train your planners in forecasting. This workshop is a great opportunity to do that. It's sort of a forecasting 101 crash course. So this course is taught by Eric Stellwagen and Sarah Darren. So for those of you who attended past webinars, you may have seen them present. And a lot of our users find this workshop really helpful to learn about, how to implement these methods in ForecastPro. But it is designed to be useful regardless of whether you use ForecastPro or a different forecasting tool or maybe just Excel. And they're really interactive courses. You're able to ask questions to the instructors and talk to other forecasters in the course. So we do limit the number of attendees just to make sure it stays interactive. So if you are interested, we encourage you to sign up sooner rather than later just to reserve a spot. And you can do so by going to the link at the bottom there, going to our website. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we also have our user conference that's coming up this September. So after several years of it being delayed due to the pandemic, we're very excited to be back to in-person. We can't wait to see all of our users and connect with you in person, face-to-face. It's going to take place September 19th through 21st, and it'll be in Cambridge, Massachusetts, so right outside of Boston. And this is designed to help you get the most out of ForecastPro. So there are a lot of presentations, including tutorials, case studies, panels, and even more. We're continuing to add more presentations. So stay tuned over the next couple of months as we continue to update the agenda. It's a good opportunity to not only meet the BFS team. Again, we love seeing our users in person, but you also get to meet other ForecastPro users. So the user conference is in person, but it is a hybrid event. So you can either attend in person or online. So again, there's the link here at the bottom of the screen. We encourage you to visit the website to learn more. You can check out the agenda and also access registration there. Next slide, please. Thank you. And then finally, you saw Marco use ForecastPro today. If you are interested in learning more about the software, please reach out to us. We would love to connect with you. So if you'd like, you can type into the chat on your control panel, let us know you want to schedule a demo, or you can give us a call or visit our website. We do offer a free trial of the software. You can download a trial version. So again, if you're interested in learning more, feel free to visit our website to download it or reach out to us. So with that, we'll move on to the questions. So I know that we're at the end of the formal hour here. So for those who are able to stay on a couple minutes, we'll take a few questions. We got a fair amount, so remember, if we don't have time to get to yours, we'll follow up with you by email. But Marco, I'll give you the first question on our list. So someone asked, what's the difference between inventory position and final inventory?
Okay. Inventory position. Sometimes in this replenishment model, final inventory is the final on-hand inventory, the one that you have in your warehouse, actually able to be delivered. And the inventory position takes into account the in-transit inventory, the orders that you just placed, that you have placed. Okay, that's basically the difference. The inventory could have more variables, but the most important ones are the in-transit inventory that is not already in our warehouse. That's the difference. That's the difference.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, like I said, we got a lot of questions, so I'm going to try to rapid fire get them off to you so we can cover a couple of them. Another question that someone asked that I think would be helpful for everyone on the webinar to hear the answer to is how do you get to that ForecastPro override table that you showed in your demonstration?
To the override table.
Yeah, or that view that you were showing the
Oh,
replenishment models.
this one,
Yeah.
yeah. Here, this is the actual the button, the override. The override, if you start a new project, of course, it's not going to have all these lines. If you start a new project, I'll do it. If you start, no, I don't want to close it. Maybe you have a question here. Okay, I'll do this. If you start clicking just on this, if you use this one, this is the button that you're asking for. But in the beginning, if you haven't worked with this replenishment models, the only lines that you will have is the statistical row, the overrides row, normally 3 rows by default, but you can change that, of course, and the forecasting row, nothing else. You won't have all this. All these are basically included, doing things like this. Add a row, and if they are external data, I can read the external data from this row. If you want an explanation, I will try to do a new one. I'll do it. I'll do it. No. You can read the data here. There. Let me see. Oh, let me see here. Files, and I have the historical data, then the external data, and then modifiers. I'll do it quickly. I know we don't have that much time. And now I just read the data. If you click on the, sorry. Okay, if as you can see here, when you open ForecastPro, you will have the override grid open here, but it will only have this rows, and actually, as I said before, 3 rows, because that's the standard. But you can change that just basically by removing or adding rows. If you remove or add rows before the forecast row, you are adding basically override rows, nothing else. But if you add a row below the forecast row, like this, you can do here anything you want. Let's say an order quantity, something like that. As you can see, you have 2 options here: a global formula, a global row, or an item-specific row. Item-specific row is just like the one manual entry that I showed you before, and the global is for all of the items in your portfolio here. As you can see, we have now the order quantity. If I want to create a formula, I can just type it down here. But if you want to read external data, just right-click here, go to Settings, and then go to Add or Remove. And in the Add or Remove, you would have the inventory, the in-transit, and the coverage months, which are the data that I just included in the external data files, something like this. And you will have this data that I just read from those files, and in practice should be from your database or something like that. And then now you can include any formula that you want. If you want the safety stock formula, it's a very simple one. Let's say safety stock, something like this. And if you want the regular one, the one with just the token, and the one that I used, you can do this. And right now you have the safety stock. And then you can include here any formula you want. That's basically the button.
Awesome. Thank you. So another question kind of off of that a few people asked, they were wondering if you'd be able to share a copy of that basic file setup, or the files you used in the data manager.
Yeah, I can send all of the files. Just one warning: these models are examples. Okay, so do not try to use them exactly in the same way to your organization, because you will find some things that they won't apply. So that's what I said before. You have to customize the model to your organization. And as I said before, these are 2 examples, and there are more complicated examples if you want them to be more exact. But of course, I can send you the Excel files, and I can send you the actual forecast profile with everything.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That would be great. And what we can do is when we send out the email about the webinar recording, we can include those files in it so that, you know, it's all kind of right there. You can watch the presentation again. If anyone wants to follow along with those files as a starting point, they can do that. Well, again, we had a couple other questions. I think just for the sake of time, we're, you know, several minutes past the official end. So I think we'll end the webinar there. But again, as a reminder, if we didn't get to your question, we'll follow up by email. But again, thank you everyone for taking the time to attend. We hope you found it useful, and yeah, have a great rest of your day. And Marco, I don't know if you want to add any final thoughts.
Well, thank you everyone. It's a real pleasure for me to be here. And I'm reading actually a couple of questions on the chat, and I'll answer all of your questions along with Sabina, and we'll send you all of the answers. And if you have further questions, please contact us, and we will gladly answer all of your questions. We're here to help.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, so again, thank you everyone, and have a great rest of your day. Bye now.